Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ruining Your Childhood.
Welcome back to another episode of Ruining Your Childhood, one sculpt at a time. Today we're going to be creating our biggest sculpt yet. I'm talking 4 times the size, maybe even 5. But who's counting? Per request of a few people in the comments, we're going to be creating a Garbage Pail Kid. Specifically, Abam. Now, I feel like this is probably the most iconic Garbage Pail Kid, but let me know down below who your guys' favorite was. I also like that Dead Ted guy. He was pretty sweet. Anyway, now that we got ourselves a big ball of tinfoil, we can start covering this bad boy in some skin flap. Wrap this bad boy and then I give it a good vigorous rub down. Jesus Christ. Once I was happy with my smooth ball, we could go ahead and stick a fat loaf of clay on the bottom portion. This is going to be the lower section of the face, kind of where the mouth is going to go. Speaking of mouths, we're going to go ahead and draw in the rough shape. Then using an assortment of sculpting tools, we're going to go ahead and start shaping that mouth. Now, Garbage Pail Kids are known for their chubby cheeks, so I just take the handle part of my sculpting tool to kind of push those back. Up next, we got his nose. Pinching off a loaf of clay, I go ahead and slap that on the front of the face. Then using my thumbs, I go ahead and do a 2-hand method to start blending that in. And the reason I'm using both hands at the same time is to show off. No, I'm just kidding. The reason I do this is it helps me actually make things a little bit more symmetrical. So there you go. Happy with how the nose came out, I went ahead and went back to the mouth to start making it pop a little bit more by bringing out those lips. I also felt like the bottom part of his face was a little too round, so we're going to fasten a piece of clay to the bottom of the face, blend that in to make up his chin. After smoothing things out, we could go ahead and start on his eyeballs. As for Adam's eyes, I went ahead and pre-baked a ball of clay, slicing that bad boy in half. Then take those sliced balls, placing it on his face, then pressing them into position, before adding thick worms of clay above his eyes to make up his eyebrow ridge and eyelids. After getting his eyes in place and making sure it's all blended in, we could start adding in all those tiny little details. I take an assortment of sculpting tools, adding little pores and wrinkles, little crow's feet, micro blemishes all across the face. As for his lower lip, I went ahead and took my smallest ball stylus, drawing a rough line at the bottom, then going over top of that with a silicone sculpting tool to add some little divots and cracks. And of course, we give him that signature dimple. I went ahead and threw in some rubber gloves to make sure I don't get any fingerprints all over it, and I also found that they have a nice little texture on the tip. So I went ahead and just tapped that all over the face just for why not, you know? As for Adam's ears, we're going to go ahead and start off with a ball of clay, smashing it flat, then slicing it in half. Just taking one side of that flattened circle, applying it to the side of the face, blending that in, taking my small ball stylus and going in and adding in all those inner ear details. Adam's head's coming along nicely, we just need to take a little bit off the top, that way we can add that explosion later. To achieve Adam's lobotomy, all I did was take a large cookie cutter, slicing a circle out of the top, peeling out the clay, revealing his inner skull. Feeling a little bit like Hannibal Lecter right now. Anyway, now that we got that hole cut out on the top, we can start adding these little triangles around the sides of the circle to make it a little bit more jagged. I do make sure that I keep those little pieces, that way I can reapply them later, but sticking outward to make it look like the head is exploding from the inside out. Now I wanted to glorify this a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and poke little holes all along the inside and make it look a little more fleshy. And with the head done, it's off to the oven for its first bake. And we're back. While it was in the oven, I went ahead and made this armature wire thingamajiggy off camera. This is how we're going to add his little explosion. But first, we'll work on his body. Much like his head, we're going to start off with a large wad of aluminum foil that I wrap tight until we get a nice cylinder shape, roughly about the same size as his head. Happy with the size and shape, we can go ahead and start wrapping this bad boy in a nice thin layer of clay. And then use the back end of a paintbrush just to smooth out all the bumps and wrinkles until we got a nice smooth body. I insert these 2 little pieces of wire at the top of the body. This is going to help hold the head on later. Up next, we're going to start on his shirt, starting with his collar. Using a flattened out piece of clay, I cut these little triangle bits out that I attached to the top, blending in only the top portion, that way we could finagle with the bottom piece later. I cut out a long thin strip of clay, laying that between the 2 collar pieces, making sure to only flatten one end, that way it has a little bit of overlay. Went ahead and went back to those collar pieces to kind of rough them up a little bit before adding all these tiny little buttons to the front of the shirt, then adding little wrinkles extending from those buttons. I then add a little chunk of clay to the top. This is going to be the knot for his tie. As for Adam's jacket, I went ahead and added these two little flat pieces of clay to the front, then just smoothed them in with my thumb. As for the little lapels on the front of the jacket, I went ahead and just pre-cut those off camera, applied those to the front, then used my finger to blend them in, and we're on to his legs. I insert a couple pieces of wire into the front of the body for some added support, rolling those into a nice tight foil log, cramming those into the front of the body, then finishing it off by covering it with a thick blanket of clay. To make the legs transition into the body a little bit more natural, I'm going to go ahead and stick some dank nugs of clay into the sides, building up those hips. And to make his legs look a little bit more natural, we're going to go ahead and add some kneecaps. I just took some balls of clay, sticking those onto where the knees should be, and then blend that in. Now homeboy Adam's rocking that suit and short combo, so we're going to just be adding little flaps of clay over top of the thighs, cutting it off at the knees. Once we get those into their position, we're going to go ahead and blend that in straight into the hips. Moving back up to the jacket, I wrap another flattened out piece of clay around the back portion of the body, blending only the top section, leaving a little bit of overhang. Moving on to the suit collar, I just cut out a long strip of clay, wrapping that around the top. After I make sure everything's all smoothed out and blended in, we could go ahead and stick the head back on and put it in the oven for another bake. With Adam's body back and baked, we could start adding his shoes. I wanted to keep his shoes pretty similar to how they look on the card. I like the idea of him being realistic, but still having those little white doll shoes. To achieve this look, I'm going to cram 2 fat logs of clay at the end of each of his leg nubs, smoothing and rounding off the tips. I then add little flattened out clay extensions to the back end of the foot to make the heels. About the shoes, I add little lines across the bottom and around the sides just to give it a little bit of extra detail. For Adam's arms, these are going to be virtually made the exact same way as his legs and everything else. We're starting off with an insertion of wire for strength, adding aluminum foil for bulk, then finishing it off with a layer of clay. After I got this bad boy wrapped nice and tight, we could go ahead and go over it with the back end of my paintbrush and then apply that to the body, giving the tip a tickle, then blending it and smoothing it out. With everything firmly fastened to his body, we could start on his dirty phalanges. I went ahead and rolled out these little fat sausages that I cram onto the end of his nubs. As I'm attaching these fingers, I'm trying to keep in mind the pose of him smashing that big old explosion button. Speaking of buttons, have you hit the subscribe button yet? I went ahead and made that button off camera because I don't like to show you what I'm doing apparently. But with the button in hand, he's pretty much good to go for the oven. I did stick these little pieces of tin foil around the body just to help hold things in place. And Adam survived the fires of Mordor. He's back and looking crispy as ever. Anyway, let's start the painting process. My painting process is quite simple. I first just go around Adam's entire body, painting all of his base coats their base coat colors. Started off by painting his shoes white and his undershirt white as well. And while that white dries, I go ahead and paint the suit blue, followed by painting his yellow tie yellow. I then grab a smaller brush to add some red stripes going across the tie. While I had the red paint out, I went ahead and started on the button part, painting the button part red, then followed by the controller of it, black. I did keep the little ring silver because that's going to be, well, silver in the end. We're going to go ahead and pause there, let the button dry while I work on Adam's flesh. I have this skin tone colored paint that I like to use for all of my figurines. The only problem is that it's incredibly translucent, so it takes multiple layers to build up. But once you do, it looks great. Now that we have everything base coated, we can start adding in those details. Starting with the button, I went ahead and went around it, adding this silver paint to kind of make it look a little bit more weathered. Then we moved back to the body to start bringing this bad boy to life. Now this is where I have the most fun when it comes to painting, and I also feel like this just makes it look more realistic. It's just adding washes over the entire surface, and then following that all up with a dry brush. As for the washes, all I'm doing is basically taking the initial color, then adding some blacks, dark blues, purples, anything to make it a little bit darker. I then significantly water down the paint and then brush that over top. As for the dry brushing, it's just a lighter version of the initial base coat. I was pretty happy with how the body was looking so far, so we could set that aside and start working on the head. Following the same procedures that we did with the body, we're going to go ahead and start off with a red wash going over the cheeks, chins, mouth, and eye regions. This just helps make it look a little bit more lifelike and fleshy. Went ahead and let that all dry, and then we could start working on his eyes. For this, I started with a base coat of white, then I followed up with the pupil. I'm doing a little bit of measuring right here. At first, I kind of wanted him to have these little tiny beady eyes. I thought it'd be a little funny. I end up making them quite a bit bigger. In the end, you'll have to see later. I didn't actually film myself making them bigger, but Here's what it could have been. A little less creepy in the final product, but I like how it ends up looking. As for Adam's fleshy brain bits on the top, we're going to go ahead and just coat that with a dark red followed by a black wash just to make those pores pop. And as for Adam's eyebrows, I went ahead and clipped a couple more clippings of my wife's hair as she was sleeping and applied those to the face. I don't actually do that, by the way, guys. I just want to clarify. These are just, it's fake hair. It's fake. Don't worry. Now, Adam Bomb wouldn't be Adam Bomb without the bomb portion, so we gotta add that. Went ahead and stuck that little shingamadeen onto the top of his head that I made earlier. Then I take copious amounts of aluminum foil, bulking it up, making the rough structure of the explosion. Now I thought that it would be kind of cool if this guy was almost like a lamp, so I went ahead and wrapped some LED lights around the inside of the explosion. I then follow it up with a copious amount of cotton that I stretched out and hot glued to the surface. Try to do multiple layers of this to make sure all the tinfoil and lights are hidden underneath, but enough to shine the light through. I like how the cotton candy head looking so far, but to give it a little bit more shape, it went around the ends, pinching the sides to make it look more like an explosion. Then using an airbrush, I work my way around it to bring this fire to life. And with some last second surprise detailing and a little bit of assembly, we're on to those glamour shots. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and also leave a comment down below of who you would like to see me sculpt next. I'll see you next time.